After almost a decade, the US war in Iraq is over. From Basra to Baghdad, a new balance of power has emerged. But many people are living in precarity, and there are signs that mistakes made during the occupation are taking on a second life. In this second part of a special series, Fault Lines continues our journey across Iraq, from south to north, to take the pulse of a country and its people after the Americans. Our next destination is the only city in Iraq where victory celebrations were held as the last US soldier left the country. Fallujahs protested the US military presence in their city from the beginning of the occupation. And when the mutilated bodies of 4 American contractors were strung up on this bridge across the Euphrates in 2004, Fallujah's fate was sealed. What followed were 2 of the largest assaults of the entire war, with US Marines using devastating firepower to bombard the city into submission. The bloody campaigns had a profound effect on the residents of Fallujah.
يعني كان تجي تشوهات اسقاط يعني عدد يعني نسبه يوميه 10 12 هاي نسبه وهذا بين القبور هاي هذا كله يعني.
Being told that these graves are actually for people who are still dying as a result of the fighting that happened back in 2004. These are the graves of babies who've died from having birth defects and other diseases.
Nine-year-old Hamed cannot speak, eat, or walk on his own. His 2 younger siblings are buried in what Fallujahs call Martyrs Cemetery.
أنا بصراحة بالبداية قلت إذا هذا حالته هيك يعني وأثر الساعة قلت ما أترك الأطفال، بس حرام ما إحنا ديننا ما يسمح لنا أن نقطع الذرية، فجوني أطفال 2، الأول مات رأسا والثاني تشوه خلقي وندفنوا 2 مقبرة الشهداء.
When he was born, just months after the US-led invasion, Hamed seemed healthy. But after the sieges of 2004, doctors diagnosed him with brain atrophy. There's no question in his father's mind as to the cause.
أكدوا الأطباء مو بس حالة حامد، حالات هواية. الأسلحة المتنوعة اللي يستخدمها الأمريكان داخل المدينة، الفسفور الأبيض وأنواع أخرى محرمة دولياً.
Hamed's parents dread the future that lies ahead for him here in Fallujah.
ماكو إمكانية علاجه داخل القطر، وأكدوا هذا الشيء ومليت من عنده ما.
It is not an easy situation. You have to have a child with anomaly and you have no money to treat him. You have to watch him until he died or until he grew up with this anomaly. You can imagine.
In the neonatal ward at Fallujah General Hospital, Dr. Samira Alani has grown used to seeing babies born with cancers and congenital malformations.
Both hands are abnormal. It's only 4 fingers, not only missing, also it's abnormal shape.
Zain Jassim is 24 days old. During the siege in 2004, her mother Sadia was living in a village on Fallujah's outskirts.
But it is not serious. We have more serious cases.
Like many residents of Fallujah, Dr. Alani fled the worst of the fighting in 2004. When she returned, she and her colleagues were immersed in treating the injuries and trauma in its wake. Then they started seeing a new crisis emerge.
The incidence of birth defect not as we used to see before. We are facing these defects nearly daily.
Now she documents every case she sees. She has hundreds of pictures and video clips saved on her laptop of newborns with cleft palates, deformed limbs, cancers, enlarged and atrophied brains.
Congenital heart defects are at the top of the list of our defects. We have many cases of heart defects.
The misshapen hearts are harder to detect, and those babies are often miscarried, stillborn, or die shortly after birth. In a year-long survey Alani conducted at the hospital, she found 147 incidents of congenital malformation per 1,000 births, about 5 times the international norm. And in another study, she and her colleagues found higher than normal levels of enriched uranium and mercury in the hair of parents of children born with congenital malformations and cancers.
How do you explain that?
Something happened. As you know, uranium is not present in the kids' toys, and it's not. We didn't buy it from the shops. There's something happened in the city.
Well, everybody knows what happened in the city, don't they?
Actually, we need more investigations. We need our DNA have to be examined. Our chromosomes have to be examined. You know what happened in Japan after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You hear about what happened years after that.
Study by study, Alani is trying to confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt what people in Fallujah are convinced is true. That there's a causal link between the weapons used by US forces in 2004, the amounts of enriched uranium in their bodies, and the alarming rise in numbers of sick and malformed children here.
My personal experience, although I don't want to talk about it, it is so harmful. But one of my brothers have lost 2 kids because of anomalies. Year after year, 2010, 2011. Yeah.
After the US assaults on Fallujah, many of the foreign fighters fled north and set up camp in the city of Mosul. I used to live there until Al-Qaeda-linked groups moved in. While the violence has dropped significantly from its peak in 2006, civilian casualty rates across Iraq are on the rise again. Since I left in 2004, Mosul has been under siege from car bombings and assassinations of government officials. Governor Athil al-Nujayfi's predecessor was killed in one of those attacks.
Mosul people to the life.
He blames the Americans for Mosul's plight, and he says it's taking on new dimensions.
The American makes a lot of mistake in Iraq, not just to put Al-Qaeda and to fight here, but also in the how to govern Iraq. They leave Iraq, but they give Iraq to Iran. Iran cannot enter Iraq like this if not the American is here.
Nujayfi says his forces have made great strides to rid his city of Al-Qaeda.
أعتقد أن القاعدة الآن هي شيء يعني خيالي أكثر منه شيء حقيقي. هناك من يحاول أن ينشر المخاوف من القاعدة أو من قوة القاعدة في الموصل، وأنا واثق أنه ليس هناك قوة حقيقية.
But with armed police escorting us to our next destination, it's clear that fear still remains. Mosul's streets are eerily quiet, and there's a sense that the violence for which the city is notorious is never far away. The family I'm about to meet protected me from that violence, and this is the first time I'll have seen them since their youngest son and the Reuters photographer whose work is on exhibit here was killed by US soldiers.
He said, I want to hear what you feel when you heard when Namir is killed.
Well, I was very sad to hear that. I was in Doha and we saw the story appear on the Reuters wire. So I called you, I think, at that time, and I asked you to call Nabil because I couldn't get through to... I think Nabil was in Syria.
Yeah, that's Nabil is behind of you. Oh.
Namir's older brother Nabil was in charge of the Reuters operation in Mosul. We used to be a team. The three of us travelled around together, reporting on the growing insurgency turning Mosul's streets into a bloodbath.
2003, 2004 is good.
Yeah.
Not like now.
Yeah.
And not like in 2007. No, very difficult.
Yeah.
You leave Mosul in...
Just when it was starting to get
April.
bad, yeah.
In April, I think.
Yeah, you saved me. Yeah.
As the situation deteriorated, Namir was moved from Mosul, but he continued to document life under occupation and the violence it had unleashed.
مجموعة الصور التي وثقها نمير هي لتاريخ العراق
لتاريخ العراق منذ أن جاء الاحتلال. هناك تاريخ أسود نتج عنه صور كثيرة من الدمار والقتل والانفجارات والموت الذي جلبه الاحتلال، ولكن برغم هذا الجحيم الذي كان فالحياة كانت مستمرة في العراق. فصور نمير أثبتت أن هناك تاريخا أسود وأبيض.
Within 3 years, Namir was killed by US forces in Baghdad. His death captured forever on video shot by the US military and eventually leaked to the public by WikiLeaks.
Come on, fire!
And then Namir was still alive.
Yes.
And then he was started running.
Yes, but the pilot keep fire. He kept fire for killed Namir. كل من فقد عزيزا يشعر أن هذه حالة صعبة، فهي لحظة موجعة جدا، وهو ألم لن يزول، هو باقي في القلب ولن يزول. ما خلفته أمريكا هو شعب مهدد بالعمليات المسلحة، شعب كان يعد لحمة واحدة في السابق.
Less than an hour's drive from Mosul, the notion of Iraq as one fabric has now all but disintegrated. The prospect of Kurdish autonomy has been a fault line cutting across the north since Iraq's borders were drawn. But when I was based here, it still at least looked like the same country.
Now it looks like a different planet, and that seems to be the master plan that the Kurdish authorities have. Massive foreign investment and regeneration and infrastructure projects transforming the way these cities look.
Kurdish leaders established their own regional government when a US-sponsored no-fly zone was set up here after the first Gulf War. And they welcomed US forces during the 2003 invasion. In the years that followed, Washington lavished political and financial support on Kurdish leaders, billing the region as tomorrow's Iraq today, an example of how a liberated Iraq could look. So if there's one place where the US can be proud of its legacy in Iraq, it should be here. And on the surface at least, the future seems brighter than ever. It's a bit surreal to see the architecture transformed and major international chains selling goods at Western prices. And it doesn't entirely make sense. Most Iraqi Kurds earn only around $400 a month.
These malls are full of people, but it seems like those actually doing the shopping aren't Kurds from this region. It's Iraqi Arabs who've travelled up from Baghdad or the rest of the country, and tourists who've come in from Turkey and even Iran.
While Iranian influence may be expanding in the south, Turkey's footprint here is growing by the day. Iraq has become Turkey's second largest trading partner. Most of that trade is with the Kurdish region. After years of animosity, economic potential seems to have won out over Turkey's antagonism toward Iraqi Kurds and their dream of independence. And the Kurds appear to have found a new patron. From constructing the roads to rebuilding the souk, signs of the deepening ties are everywhere. We even bumped into the Turkish consul in town for a visit.
How would you describe the state of the relationship today? Has it changed a lot over the last few years?
Well, yes, and every other day, every passing day, it's getting better. I have to admit that, no one in Turkey ever imagined that our relations with Iraq, and especially with this region, would become so excellent.
The Turkish company building on this site has some of the biggest contracts with the municipal authorities. But 90% of the workers here are from Turkey. So not everyone's feeling the benefits of Erbil's boom.
راسته يعني بناوش كذا بس بمنا كذا بناوش بمنا كذا كمان الدولة ما عندنا بمنا كذا زمان أم كواج كل فقيرة كم بمنا كذا أم بس مثلا دماء بس كان إيش كم إيش منادنا بس كابا مثلا بنجلاديش الشيء يعني تركيا عرب ده كابا مثلا ما نجيب تصاور إيش دنا إيش نادنا
يعني واتساكا خلق همو حكومات باري زورا يعني جياني خلشي دابينكا جياني خلق دابينكا سوكا او داهاتي كلا كردستان هيو يعني لابد زهيا زو زياتا لا خدمت يعني خدمتي خلق كامترا.
The Kurds have always been strong supporters of their own political leaders and the struggle for self-determination that they have represented. When I was here 5 years ago, I never used to hear the levels of frustration with the Kurdish leadership that we're hearing now. And as we travel from Erbil to Sulaymaniyah, that discontent becomes even louder. The families who've been living in this building have been told they have to leave. The government is making them move to the city limits so that this area can be redeveloped. They say they don't have the means to build homes there.
يا بيبشي حلالي نابي شي ولا مسؤولية ما صار شي بياشتي خلق داجي كي خلق بكوجي خلق بقرد بي بمعنى أبي بشت
بس مسؤولة قاعد دعانا هذا هو كل ركب أبي خوان برباني كله كيو تانا بوكم يجيان
أوان دوستي مدة سوما كوا خلشيلن دينار لقل درو.
There's a growing perception that the money flowing into the region is ending up in the pockets of a small business class, all of them politicians and party men. A year and a half ago, frustration here in Sulaymaniyah boiled over. It was February 2011, and inspired by people's uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, Kurdish activists took to the streets against government corruption and repression, launching a protest of thousands that lasted 63 days.
لبروا إما بناي برزمان ناوي إما جادو بردو سيران وصفا ما ناوي أوي جنجي أمولاتا خميتي أوي جنجي أمولاتا دوايكا تنها أويك أسادي ببين تنها أويك الثروة السامانية أم ملتا بقرته بو ميلاد نشأت الجيرفاني شوار كسول لم هري مدى نشأت الجيرفاني أوانيكا خواني كرد خوان إيرشد.
On the first day, government security forces opened fire on demonstrators who had surrounded political party offices and were throwing stones. Dozens were wounded. One man was shot dead. Over the next 2 months, government forces killed at least 9 more protesters. Among them, Zahir Mahmoud Iman's 14-year-old son, Sorku.
ساعات دو 20 دقيقة هنان درو برديان جوري چاوديري لجوري چاوديري چون بولاي سرداني مكر خوم كركانم همو بدياري وين بو بساعات دونيو دليل ليدان كوت.
To date, no legal action has been taken to punish those responsible.
دو صلاتي كردي يكي بناوي بارتي ديمقراطي كردستانو نيكيك بناوي يكيتين مسلماني كردستانو أمانا أمدو طرفخ دستيان سورة لخويني شهيد بوني كركاني إما
ممكن عندك زيادة رؤية تدابير كمافيا بلام قندلي هي كمكرتي هي.
The Speaker of the Kurdistan Regional Government, or KRG, tries to cast the anger as a sign of progress.
كارج طبيعي خلق توربي شو خلق روجانا برو بيشة ودتي بداية كاني خلق زيادة بي خلق برو تساوي زيادة دكريتو لقال همو قران كارديك بداية تازة ديتا بيشة.
We've also been speaking to people who participated in the demonstration in 2011. We've spoken to the father of a man who was killed, shot dead in the demonstration. That doesn't add up to us.
إما إداني أو ما كدوا لهمو آستا كان لآستي حكومة لآستي برلمان لآستي شعبي ولآستي أحزاب كان يشتغل لهمو دزقا كان إداني أو مسألة يكرا بلام كفوزات درزبو كبلاماري مقرر درا كتقل يكرا كشتيج درزبي كس إما إداني أو دكي طبعا.
But the Kurds have other worries. Tensions with the central government are escalating. Kurdish leaders have been signing development contracts with foreign oil companies, asserting it's their right to do what they please with resources in their territory. Baghdad says that's just not true.
The KRG, this is the Kurdish regional government, feel that they have the right to negotiate, sign and decide on the oil that is located in the region. They feel they have the right to sign these contracts. And this is where the real disagreement lies.
With their US allies gone, Iraqi Kurds are feeling less secure than when thousands took to the streets a year and a half ago demanding democratic reforms.
اما بيبزاني كردستان حكومت نيه شريكي وكو سوريا رو بعد مالكي بناوي خب ناو بجيوان ويتو هم يقريت ئێمە عقوڵەیدانمان گرتووە بە خۆمانە لەسەر ئەم گەندەڵی و دزی و پیا و کوژی و نائازادیە لە پێناو ئەوەی ئەم تۆزەکیانەی کە بە درێژایی مێژووی کورد هیچی نەبووە ئەم تۆزە هەیە نەفەوتێ.
But as Kurdish leaders defy Baghdad and broker deals for oil pipelines with Turkey, it seems they're betting that this new alliance will protect them, even if it costs them the promise of an independent Kurdistan.
حتى ئازادی هەبێ دیموکراتیە بە عێراقێکی دیموکراتی ئەمە پێمان باشە بەشێک من لە عێراق بەڵام کاتێک کە عێراق کوردی نەوێ و بێوێ بە نیزامێکی دیکتاتۆری یان فەردی حکمی کوردستان بکە کوردستان عێراق بگرێتەوە بۆ سەردەمی دیکتاتۆری ئەو کاتی ملت خۆی قرارەدا چار نووسێکی بخۆی هەڵدەبژێرەوە حتما ئەوسا ئێمە لەگە ئەو نیزامە نابین کە شێوێک لە شێوەکانی نیزامی دیکتاتۆری سەدامی بێ بۆیە ئێمە لەسەر ئەساسی ئەوە ئیش دەکەین کە دەرگاکان لە هەموو لایەکان بکەینەوە لە هەموو لایەک دەرگاکان بکەینەوە علاقاتمان لە هەموو لایەک باش بێت.
If there's one man who epitomizes claims that Iraq is in danger of sliding back into authoritarian rule, it's fugitive Vice President Tariq al-Hashimi. The day after US troops left the country in December, Prime Minister Maliki issued an arrest warrant for Iraq's most senior Sunni politician. Accused of financing death squads targeting Shia, he fled to the Kurdish north to escape arrest.
Nice to meet you, Sebastian Wolf from Al Jazeera. Thanks so much for talking to us.
We caught up with him shortly before he left the country for Turkey.
My case is straightforward, sectarian, politically motivated. In no way Tariq al-Hashimi could be engaged in any sort of violence.
Hashimi says that his security guards have been detained and tortured into making false confessions against him. Members of his entourage show us photos they say are of one who died in custody. His body appears to show signs of torture.
And this is burned?
The judicial process has to be respected. And if Tariq al-Hashimi believes he is innocent, he should go to the court and prove that innocence. He cannot flee the country or sit somewhere and start trying to politicize the issue.
The drama is the most visible manifestation of a political crisis that threatens further fragmentation and Iraq's redescent into violent conflict. Hashimi says the charges are more evidence that the Prime Minister is consolidating power along sectarian lines.
The American deliberately penalized the Arab Sunnis and entertained the Shia communities and the Kurdish communities. I am happy that the Kurdish now establishing their semi-state in Kurdistan. They deserve it. But at the same time, the oppression against the Arab Sunni communities, in fact, making some sort of injustice.
No Sunni being attacked, no Shia being attacked by the government. They participate in the government. They are the main component of the country. But there is a political, I don't deny, there is a political differences.
The reality is that we don't have the real democracy in this country. It is a fake. And Iraq is moving towards a very dangerous situation. It's going to be a dictatorship, but in a sectarian way.
Throughout our journey across the country, from Basra to Erbil, from Najaf to Baghdad, Fallujah and Mosul, the post-occupation landscapes have varied. Every city unique, every stretch of road another distinct piece of Iraq. But in each place, the people we've met have voiced similar things. Impatience at the lack of basic services and jobs, anger at political corruption, distrust of the regional powers that seem to have more influence over their destinies than they do, and deep, lingering bitterness about what invasion and 9 years of US presence here has created.
Yeah.
That legacy, for nearly everyone that we've met, can be summed up in a single word: fear. Fear of the Prime Minister and his grip on power. Fear of government security forces and the armed groups, of sectarian politics and regional power struggles. Fear that the ghosts of the past will never stop haunting the present.
And if Iraq is going to continue in that way, it's going to be divided. And there will be a war before they divide it and after they divide it.